Welcome to Let Me Be Clear. My name is Ignacio Rodriguez, Principal Architect at IR Architects. We are a luxury design firm that specializes in custom residences here in the city of Los Angeles. The reason or the way this podcast really started is Kevin here, my buddy Kevin, who's a Los Angeles native his whole life, really was asking me questions on how do we go about rebuilding in the Palisades. And that just sparked this discussion on how do we explain how do we rebuild in the Palisades.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ignacio is my number one mentor out here. Something that's connected me to the Palisades is of a project I've been working on for several years now where we're developing AI wildfire protection systems for residential properties. And something like the Palisades fire is, it resonates, and it's something that I've dedicated a large portion of my life of having conversations with these homeowners and trying to come up with creative solutions. But being that you've been in the business for a decade or more and had so much success, I mean, you have priceless, valuable information that, I think is very valuable to the people within the Palisades. But, today I'd really like to dive in first into how you as architects are kind of the translators of code and policy, and even more specifically for the Palisades.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the number one role, right, that we have to do, that everybody expects us to do is everybody wants to build a house, right? Like, what can I build is always their first question. What can I do? And so that really comes to respond to that. You have to understand the codes, the regulations, the different restrictions from different agencies, CCNRs, stuff like that. And to be able to then explain, these are the guides of what you can do. And in the Palisades specifically, there's strict regulations as to what you can and cannot do to make sure you qualify for the 110%, staying within the 110% rebuild parameters. And so that's our job, is to understand the code, interpret the code, and then give it back to the clients so they understand what they can and cannot do.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that, I think we all hear a lot is Class A roofing. What does that actually mean? And has that evolved at all in the recent past since the fires, or what is it?
Yeah, so Class A is a rating that a material's rated for, which dictates how susceptible that material is to combust, to burn, and how long it will last in a fire if fire was directly applied to it. So Class A rating is the highest rating you could get on a material. That being said, there are higher ratings, or there are different coatings that can apply more strength so that a material can perform under fire for longer periods of time.
Yeah. And I think whenever a crazy natural disaster or something like the Palisades fire happens, that people start to come up with their own creative solutions. I feel like one that we've heard is building with concrete. Is that something that you're hearing a lot, or people are trying to implement, or?
Yeah. I mean, yes, I hear it a lot. Every new client has either concrete or steel. And I think in concept, it's a great concept, right? Like there's types of construction, type 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Type 1 construction is basically all metal and concrete. So there is a good sound premise to why you do that. But I think the biggest component to construction, especially in homes, is it's not really the studs or the concrete walls. It's keeping the fire outside of your building. Right. And the idea is if the fire doesn't get in your building and it stays outside of your building, well, then we're probably going to be okay. Right. Like, yeah, something might get charred, something might tarnish or change colors per se, but it didn't burn. It stayed outside of the building. And so that's the idea that I've been explaining to clients. Like, sure, if we build out of concrete walls, when we come back, the concrete walls are going to be there. Everything else is gone, but the walls will be there.
For
and
sure.
So, and even then, the walls might be damaged, right? Like we might have to take off layers of that concrete and refinish it. And so that being said, like I think it's a good idea, but in practice, I don't think it's very practical in the
Yeah.
residential space.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you brought up keeping fire out, and that's because most of these homes they're burning down from just little embers that are flying from the wind and finding combustible material around the property, or even getting into the vents. We've talked about this briefly before, but what kind of technology are you guys starting to implement in the design process to prevent some of this stuff?
Yeah, so so we do a roof and eave sprinkler system. It's a smart roof and eave sprinkler system that is designed to recognize when there's a fire, recognize its proximity to the structure, and then deploy water from the domestic water source to kind of cool the building off. And it's just like anything else, right? If you wet your hand, you can run your hand through fire and be okay. Now, if you hold your hand in fire, if it's wet, that water will take a minute before it evaporates and then it's going to burn. And so the idea is this recognizes the intensity and it sprays the building. It consistently sprays the building to cool those materials down and to basically allow that fire to keep moving.
Yeah.
Right? Fire is looking to burn, is looking for fuel. If it cannot burn it, it is going to go in a different direction because it cannot burn it. And so that's the idea behind it is this system is smart. It recognizes when the fire is close by and then it deploys itself. And then it recognizes when the water is turned off and it then shifts its water source from the domestic water system to the pools or the spas, and it starts draining from that.
Right.
And the idea is to have enough water, a water backup system for 2 hours.
Right.
With the building envelope being a 1 hour rated and the water source being another 2 hours, that's 3 hours worth of protection that you're going to get. And usually, as I mentioned to you, the fire is going to kind of like move past you.
Right.
If it cannot burn it, it's just going to keep going and find another source.
Yeah, for sure. I have a million questions around that, but we'll save it for another time. Getting into, I guess, a little bit more of the technicality of that.
No, we can talk about it now. Yeah, it's a very important topic.
Yeah, for sure. So having conversations with firefighters and stuff. One of the drawbacks, and I could see, some innovation around it is wind patterns changing as far as like running it for 2 hours and having the fluidic resources for that. But the fire moves away and then comes back.
Yeah.
And then are you guys able to tap into the city resources at all, or is that not allowed because the firefighters need those city resources? Is there any connection to those main lines?
Yeah. I don't think we're allowed to tap into those resources, and the sprinkler systems that we're using are not like heavy water use because we're trying to deploy it over 2 hours, right? So the goal is to wet the building and then consistently wet the building enough so that it stays wet, but not like soak the building and everything around it.
Makes sense.
And so that's the premise behind it. I'm sure. In talking with the different companies, we could ask them some different ideas. And then also, like the ambers, right? Ambers is a big component. Not letting those ambers get in your attics or your crawl space.
The ventilation,
at all.
right?
Everything has to be mechanically ventilated. I think passive ventilation is great. And I think, it's a very practical system until an event like this happens when it's not just a fire, but then it was windy. And so if you have a natural source that's drawing air from the outside into your building and it's really windy, it's going to create that force. It's going to shove things into your attic and it's going to shove smoke. It's going to shove all kinds of items that you might not want in your attic or your crawl space. So now we're having a mechanical system that we can close this off. And in a fire event, we're shutting the whole house down.
How's that controlled?
It's smart. It's part of our home automation smart home system.
And you have those in pretty much every home.
Every home nowadays, every house is intelligent, and so it just makes it so that it's like if you see something crazy coming towards your car, you're not going to leave the windows open.
Of course,
you're not. You're going to close them up and turn off the air conditioning from outside air to recirculate the air inside. And so it's those kinds of concepts that already exist. They just
taking them to the next level,
exactly.
right? And I'm sure that's stuff that we'll see at like the CES conferences that kind of gives us some foresights to what the future looks like for home design and protection, et cetera. But getting back to kind of code and regulation, I feel like there's two key players. There's one that's the city, and also at the Palisades being so close to the ocean, there's also the Coastal Commission.
Mm-hmm.
How do those two forces interact? And then how are you kind of the person who bridges the gap and communicates that with the homeowners?
Yeah, so that's a great question, right? So the city of Los Angeles has its own set of rules and guidelines and codes that it's following. And then the California Coastal Commission is following the California Coastal Act. And that's a whole different set of regulations and guidelines because they have totally different priorities. Currently, with what's going on in the city, the California Coastal Commission actually waived its requirements or its process as long as you are rebuilding. I think they actually use the word reasonable, which is amazing. A reasonable structure that is similar to what you had. They're kind of allowing you to go past their process so you can get back to your home faster. And that's tremendous. The coastal process is a years-long process.
Right.
It takes a long time. It's quite complicated. It's got a lot of opportunity for public comment, and so it just makes it for a very complex, lengthy process.
I feel like a lot of people hear the term Coastal Commission. What do they look like? Is it people walking around? Is it like a board? Is it like what is the Coastal Commission, and like kind of how do they operate? Are there troops on the ground?
Great question. So it's basically a board. It's a board of commissioners. And so they are scattered throughout the state because they monitor basically the entire coastline of the city of the state of California. I apologize. And so they have hearings in different parts. And so you basically, if your project is going in front of the board, you attend the meeting, the hearing date, wherever it is. It could be anywhere from San Diego all the way up to, Northern Cal. And then you present your project. A lot of times, if projects are pretty straightforward, they're placed on the consent calendar, which allows the project to basically be passed as part of projects that there's no opposition for in like one big chunk, so that the projects keep moving. Now, there are other cities, different jurisdictions that have a local coastal program, an LCP, which allows the local jurisdiction to enforce the California coastal goals. And that's another way of being able to kind of move a little faster through that process. Unfortunately, the city of Los Angeles does not have that, at least to the best of my knowledge, they do not. And so you have to go through the California Coastal Commission. Okay,
definitely. And then you brought up that the Coastal Commission is allowing a bit more leeway for building like for like.
Mm-hmm.
What are some instances where, or anything that you guys have run into, because you guys have so many projects going on right now, where that isn't possible, or even just like minute adjustments to the code that they're enforcing, and how do you guys navigate around those?
Yeah, so something we're seeing right now, right, is like obviously a lot of homes are lost in the Palisades, but also some homes made it. Some homes survived. Now, we have we have a project where everything around us burned except our house. And it did burn in the back, but it wasn't like the house didn't fully engulf, right? Only like it has like a solarium in the backyard and some of the landscape, and it came up the hill. So that burned, but the house didn't. And so we ended up falling in this weird conundrum where we are not a fire rebuild project, even though everything around us burned. And we would like to now redesign this house. But because we do not fall under those guidelines, we have to go through the full Coastal Commission. And it's like
almost a disadvantage, right?
It's almost like a disadvantage. And it feels like, well, my neighbors in front of me, behind me, next to me are all waived. And here I am stuck having to go through this process. And it's almost like I'm being penalized for it, right? Now, the house is completely uninhabitable. It's got so much smoke damage. Has to be strip down and rebuild, but we're not going to rebuild a
Right. And you've
1,400
had
square foot house.
conversations with the Coastal Commission about that, and they kind of give you the red light.
Yeah, I mean, well, we use a series of expediters that can to help with that process and the basically the communication between us and the city. But it's just unfortunate because for those houses that survived, like you survived, but we shouldn't have to go through Coastal to go through our redesign process now
For
that
sure.
we have to rebuild the house. I mean, the house is going to be fully damaged. It's damaged. It has to get scraped.
Right. Absolutely. So we drove around the other day, and this was my second time driving through since the fire, and the first time was alarming. Like you could smell it. It feels like an apocalypse. Like it was really just a terrifying sight to see. But when we drove through the other day, it was inviting. It kind of you could smell the air. It feels like at least the atmosphere and kind of energy of that things are moving quick and the Palisades is coming back, and almost like the timelines are moving a little bit more efficient than what we first had anticipated. So what do you see as far as the speed in which things are coming back?
Yeah, I mean, there's some houses that are fully framed. I think there's a house by Thomas James that's finished now. So yeah, everything's coming together fast, which is amazing. And I think what's exciting is the energy of the community. For at least our clients, they want to come back. They really they're eager to come back. They are moving as fast as they possibly can, checking in all the time. How's the construction process coming? What's going on? What do we need to do next? And that's always really exciting, right? Because it fuels the community to feel like they want to come back. Like us ourselves personally have 15 or 16 homes that are going to be going up now in the Palisades.
Amazing.
And so, right, like when you see that, and these are beautiful, some Spanish, some contemporary, some American colonial, just all over the spectrum. I think as clients start to see those homes come back, I think it gives you more energy. Like, what, I do want to come back. I lived here for a reason, and it's almost like, like when you're in a car crash and say you crashed like a beautiful car that you absolutely loved. And so it's easy to say, forget it, let's just go get another one. But then when you start going back and you see that one of a kind car is really what you loved, you want to go get it back. And so like you're starting to see everybody's got this energy of like, yeah, we want to come back. And I think there's going to be a lot of speed as to how fast it comes back. And I think generally people were saying 10 years. I think it's going to be faster. I think it might be like 4 to 5, which will be really exciting. And, you won't be 4 to 5, 100%. But I think 4 to 5, you might be like 80, 85%.
Yeah.
Which is going to be pretty exciting.
That's amazing. Yeah, it seems like the sentiment is really around the culture and community that the Palisades had, being like, America's, ideal city. Like that's the dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is to live there. And really just even beyond the beautiful homes and the architecture, and it's the community, right? And it's pretty cool to see everyone kind of pushing for the build back with efficiency, and it seems like the city's kind of on board with that, as well as the Coastal Commission, as far as getting the process rolling, which seemed to be a primary topic. Soon after getting into the politics of how quickly things are going to come back.
Yeah, and then from a code perspective, the city's been actually doing a great job at understanding people's different conditions, because records are not always perfect, and so people have houses that were built in the 60s. There's no drawings for, like, zero. Those don't exist. In the 80s, maybe, early 2000s for sure. And so there's a mix, like the architecture that was there is a big mix, a big range of homes that were built. And the city's been pretty good about recognizing, like, okay, I see what you guys were doing here. I see what was there. I understand it. And sometimes when you apply for a permit, just so in general, they ask you general questions. How tall is the building? How wide is it? How long is it? And people would just write down, like, 20 feet,
yeah,
25 feet. it's about 30 feet wide, 50 feet long. But like those were really like they were literally general numbers. Like
Right.
how tall are you? If I had to guess, 5, 6'2", 6'1",
Yeah.
I don't know, 6'5".
Yeah.
The reality is you know exactly how tall you are. And so the city's been really good about recognizing that there might have been just a oversight on the information that was provided. And as long as we're able to give them very logical, very clear justification, so far they've been able to say, yes, I follow your
great.
logic.
Yeah.
And that's great. And that's helpful because what's going to happen is it's going to allow people to come back and build somewhat what they had. You know, we've been pushing clients when they had a non-conforming setback as to the side yards, like let's just make it conforming. It's a better fire condition if we don't build 3.5 or 4 feet, if we go to 6 feet or 7 feet. And so we've been asked, just guiding clients through that process, and they've been able to, at least the clients that we're working with, they trust us, they listen to us, and so they've been totally on board with all of that. But in some cases, there's non-conforming conditions as to height, as to different regulations have changed from when they built it in the 80s to when it is today. And, and then the city's been good about honoring their side of the conversation.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah. And when there are some challenges that comes into what architects do and you as an artist is as creative compliance, right? And being able to take what a homeowner wants and what their vision is and understanding the new elements of your vision that you have for them given their requirements, and working around some things that, are not within compliance, but still being creative to deliver a home of their dreams, right? So, what are some scenarios where new code that comes up or things that are not in compliance have given you new creative opportunities to deliver something new that wasn't possible before?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it wasn't possible before per se, but yeah, like as I think that probably the biggest component is height. Some of the older buildings had really tall structures because they were pre-BMO, BHO guidelines. And so the height allowed us to use steeper pitches, which means that you can have a house that has a 6 to 12 pitch roof and it looks really, like architecturally speaking, 6 to 12, 8 to 12, those are really striking, beautiful roof lines. Whereas typically code incentivizes you to use 3 to 12 because that's the shallowest pitch that the code allows you to use, that would allow you to have the highest ceilings inside. But because of the way the houses were built and the way the height envelopes was, we can now go back to our 6 to 12s, 8 to 12s, which is you get really pretty roof lines. And when you look at architecture, and especially in traditional styles, those roofs are very important. So it's been fun to design and to see.
Absolutely. I love it. And, it's so exciting to see the momentum. And it's cool hearing the stories of, just driving around and, actually feeling the momentum and seeing things going on and, just diving in a little bit deeper there. But, overall, you feel like things are heading in the right direction, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Super excited to see it. Clients are really excited. It was such a traumatic event for them to get that normalcy back in their lives or at least see it. Like that's the finish line. It's very striking, I'm sure, at a personal level for them.
Amazing. Well, awesome. It's always a blast and a pleasure. And, I think it's going to be a fun journey as we continue this. So,
absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.